What's your 2 to play?
All right, let's tie together a lot of what we just talked about. Aesthetics, buy in low, 2 teams that we mentioned.
Games that may have shown up on my TV at some point in the last few weeks.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to take the points with the Niners in Green Bay, getting 2.5. I think this opened as a pick'em and has since shifted.
Jeez.
Which I know there's some question about Brock Purdy's shoulder maybe, or Nick Bosa, another guy who he left last week. So there's some injury concerns on top of the injury concerns that already existed.
What do you think? Nick Bosa's pretty excited about the Linda McMahon pick.
Yeah, I think so. He's revved up for this one. That factors into my pick.
He's going to tear down the blue wall in Wisconsin this week.
He's going to Peacock as we speak.
Swing State Bosa.
He's going back to WrestleMania 19 for some inspiration. I mentioned like the opportunity to buy low on the Niners for the season. If you'd like, I'm gonna jump on the opportunity to buy low on them for a week at least. It's just such a rare chance to catch points with them. Favored in every other game this season, with 9 of the 10 spreads being by at least a field goal. They haven't been underdogs since week 8 of the 2022 season. That's 36 consecutive regular season games.
They're 5-5 this year, right?
Yep.
It's a pretty remarkable stat for a 500 team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, like, I think speaks to the point, right? These teams are very evenly matched despite a 2-game gap in the standings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, they could link up down the road.
Like, the Packers have not been as good as their 7-3 record indicates, nor have the 49ers probably been as bad as their 5-5 record indicates.
You know what was wild when I was looking at this game? So, PFF has their advanced premium stats and ranking all these teams in various categories, but then they have like an overall grade. Mm-hmm. And the 49ers are 4th, fine, behind Detroit, Philly, Baltimore. Green Bay, 22nd.
Wait, what was the metric?
Like, just their overall grade for the team.
I mean, guys, we might need to reassess things. Like,
so 4th, and I'm like, wow, that seems high for a team that's 5-5, whatever. But the 3 teams ahead of them, I think you can make a case for. So that's not the bigger thing. The bigger thing for me is when I look and I see Green Bay at 22nd, sandwiched between the Jets and the Saints.
So maybe this is like a thing that we kind of dig into as the holidays come up here. And
holding people's feet to the fire
not
over their
necessarily.
metrics.
It's just like the philosophical conversation about that sort of thing, where it's like, I don't doubt that their numbers or their grading or whatever back that up. And I like, this is not a referendum on Pro Football Focus. Like, I like it. We use their data and stuff like that. But it's just like,
sometimes you see something, you're like, where did that come from?
7-3. I know it hasn't looked good, and they keep. But this is kind of in the same vein as the Vikings thing, where it's like, at a certain point,
Vikings 9th in overall grade.
Whatever. But like at a certain point, you've got to give credit, right? Like the numbers. Or there needs to be a disclaimer of some sort, some red font reminders.
Yeah,
like
Packers 22nd, 20th is Chicago, the team you were just talking about.
What the hell?
So it's like, where are we arriving at that? And I don't know if this is like an average maybe of all of the
So this is just like their grades. Pro Football Focus overall grade thing.
Yeah. If you go to
here we are. Yeah.
Premium stats.
Yeah.
You can sort by various categories, but you get to the overall one and 22nd. With a grade of 73.1.
That is staggering.
Thought it was a misprint. But anyways, just interesting. As far as San Francisco, though, like I think the reason I'm not totally out on them is largely tied to their offense. I think their offense is still pretty good. I think Christian McCaffrey, as he gets more up to speed and more assimilated back into that offense, this could be a week where maybe this is his sort of coming back party.
Yeah.
Green Bay, for all the defensive strides they made this year.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like,
lean a lot on turnovers and
it's
beat
not
on the ground.
When you watch it, it's like, this is very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and it just, you're gonna give up. It is kind of bend don't break or whatever. And at some point, you start throwing like legitimate talent in there against them, and it's like, Deebo Samuel's been too quiet lately to be like, oh, this could be a huge game for him.
Green Bay last in open field rushing yardage allowed, which is a very random stat. But like,
This has been the story of my life.
but
I just see Colin Kaepernick running wild.
That's the thing. It's like that's what the stat is, whatever. But like, if there's one team that I would not want to face when that is sort of your shortcoming on defense, it's probably San Francisco.
Especially if Purdy's got a bum arm. You know, it's tuck it and run a little bit more. He runs pretty well. See him in the commercial running up and down the hills and stuff.
This game, largely a coin flip.
Yeah.
Gonna look good aesthetically.
Yeah. Speaking, this one actually, whatever. Yeah, kind of a coin flip. My 2-unit pick here, aesthetically, is fine. I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles laying 2.5 on the road against the Los Angeles Rams.
I hate the Rams aesthetic.
I know it's bad.
Yeah,
it could be so good too.
I know it's such a missed opportunity.
And they have a fine kit, as it were, but it just they kind of get like caught in between.
There's too much overlap too between the Rams and the Chargers.
I was just about to say they
branding.
could be like an NFC version of the Chargers, but do you really want to be that? I don't know. Like, like they have gray. They randomly have gray that just kind of shows up way too often.
It's not even like a gray. It's like it just looks dirty.
It's a dirty white.
Yeah, it's like you ran it through the wash with some colors. And it bled onto it.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Anyways,
they're at home taking on. That's the other thing. Sunday night and Monday night football in Los Angeles this week. Interesting wrinkle. Anyway, the Eagles 2.5-point favorites. I think we'd like to antagonize Eagles fans because I think it's good for SEO basically. And,
it's healthy.
You know, it's easy to put like the Eagles in a YouTube title and try to get the page views come in. So, mea culpa, I guess. They come up a lot. I don't think I realize how good they are. They're just running through teams right now, and obviously they haven't played a whole lot of competition. I looked it up. They're 6-0 since their bye. The best team that they played in that run is Cincinnati. So it's been they've beaten some really bad teams, but it's pretty dominant. You look at talk about like numbers and things like that, and put them on a graph or whatever. EPA tiers for the season. You do like the X and the Y axis. The Lions are far and away number one. The next tier is filled with teams like Buffalo. Actually, it's not filled. There's only 3 teams. Buffalo, Baltimore, and Philly. And so that's ahead of a tier that has teams like Kansas City, Minnesota, the Commanders, Packers, Niners. So like they're better than I think I realized, even though they're first place in their division. Yeah. Like their Super Bowl odds are pretty short. They have a tested team that has been to big games and things like that. They have a very good quarterback who has an elite ceiling. You talked about Saquon Barkley, who's been one of the best players in the entire league this season. I guess I'm just starting to come around on him. If that's the case, I think 2.5 points even on the road is not enough. They have a pretty considerable rest advantage too. They played Thursday night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit of a look ahead spot. I think they play Baltimore next week, but
I also had we talked last week about the Patriots Rams game, and one of the concerns about the Rams going in was just the travel component to it. I think were they coming off a short week?
Actually, yeah,
a short week going across the country.
I'm glad you
catch up to them. Maybe this is the week it catches up to them.
I'm glad you brought that up. In the interest of fairness, I did say last week the Rams are very good when they don't have the rest advantage, and we ran through some numbers that spoke to that. So I guess I can't turn around and say that. The point is, I think the Eagles are well rested.
But it catches up to you at some point.
Yeah, the Eagles are going to be yes. That number needs to flip.
It has to. The travel
regression.
We're going back to getting old. Like the travel.
That's a good point too.
Not as easy as it used to be.
But the Rams, I think, are like pretty league average. I think they've done a really good job with what they've had available to them this year, but it's at some point maybe kind of talent really plays this time of year. I think despite the fact that they've gotten healthier and the defense has gotten better, I just don't think this is a great matchup. The Philly defense has been really good. Number 1 by EPA per play since their bye. They have over that run, again, they haven't played a whole lot of competition. They're plus 90. I mean, they just are beating the piss out of teams. So,
I'm very much in on the Eagles.
The LA's defense, again, it's looked good against a run here of Vegas, Minnesota, Seattle, Miami, and New England. This is, I think, you look at like the performance last week wasn't great. Like I think Drake May had the best game of his young career thus far. They were just unable to put that game away, and I just think you're going to have a lot of similar success here. So, yeah, I just and there's going to be a ton of Eagles fans at this game as well. Feels like a Eagles statement game in front of a national TV audience. I believe it's Sunday night game.
You know what's interesting about the Eagles is like it feels like they've gotten back to their identity of what got them to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Yeah. Like good running game, good offensive line play, very good defense. Like they lost their way for a little bit there, and maybe that was part of like that internal power struggle that you read all those reports about. And somehow, some way, they managed to figure it out, which is like pretty impressive because that generally doesn't happen when you get to a point that they were at.
Which maybe speaks to some of the under the radar stuff, where it's like we came into the season expecting fireworks. They didn't look great early, and you're just kind of like, all right, let's just wait for this thing to fall off the cliff. They steadied themselves, and now it's just kind of,
I mean, they have like. Especially offensively, they have elite talent offensively. Like that, I think of all the teams in the NFC, they're the ones that are built to take down Detroit. Like they can keep up if this thing gets into a shootout.
They can do a track
defense. Like I think that's the team that's going to cause some problems, especially if if we get to a point where that game takes place in Philly.
I misspoke a little bit there. I think the Washington game obviously is pretty impressive too. I said the Cincinnati win is probably their best one. I think the Washington one's the best one coming off of that.
Last was at the Thursday night game. Yeah, and they were down on that game, came back. Like that could have got away from
Put
them.
Up 430 yards of offense, held what's been a really good offense to less than 300 yards. So yeah, I think that's the more I misspoke a little. So not my finest hour. But.